All right, here's another question. This one's kind of on a paper. It says, how do you get out of an unhealthy or toxic friendship? And so let's assume this is not a family member. This is a friendship, okay? You got any thoughts? Let's start with you.
Well, I believe that you have to define toxic. It says, how do you get out of a toxic friendship? So I think there's not just one answer. I think you have to define what toxic is. Toxic can be someone who is bringing you down emotionally, physically. Toxic can be someone who is causing you to stumble or you to sin. Toxic could be someone who is a discouragement, someone who's trying to get you to pull away from other healthy relationships. I think there's a lot of ways you could define toxic. So before we answer the question, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, when I think toxic, I just think someone who might be affecting you physically, might be affecting you spiritually, emotionally, but just in some way that seems like you can't get your mind off of it, or it's bothering you all the time, and that you're having a big time focus. You just don't have enough energy to go around to give it that much attention. And so you kind of come to a crossroads of what do I do about it.
There are several scripture, I looked it up, there's several scripture in Corinthians and in Proverbs that talk about the unhealthy friendships bringing you down more so than pulling you up. And there are many warnings in scripture about how your friendships and your relationships can impact you negatively. And they're warnings. The scriptures are actually warnings against that. So I think that we need to heed that warning through scripture and notice that toxic relationships are to be identified as toxic and that they may be needing to be handled that way. The second part of that question was, as a believer, is it the right thing to do to get out of those relationships?
Yeah, and then that's I didn't even read that part. That's a great question. Okay, so I'm in a relationship with someone that that's not a believer, but they're toxic to my relationship. With the Lord or my walk, do I get out of the relationship? And I'll just tell you quite honestly, if they are affecting your walk, if they are affecting your relationships, if they're affecting your moral character and decision making, you've got to get out. The example's always with Jesus ate with sinners, Jesus was a friend of sinners, Jesus hung out with drunkards, he was with a tax collector, but it never said Jesus did all those things. He had the ability, and there are times in our lives when we have the character to be with people that are toxic and they do not affect us. But when a person or a habit or a sin is so toxic and I am susceptible to that or I'm affected by that, then I think you need to pull away. And so that would be my thought, whether they're a Christian or not a Christian, because let's turn it around. If they're a Christian and you're in a toxic relationship and they're destroying your life, you need to get out of that relationship anyway. Right. So to me, it doesn't matter whether they're a Christian or non-Christian. If it is toxic to you, then you need to pull out of that relationship. You have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, if they're isolating you from other people, they're hurting you in some way, I think definitely pull out, but because that would be unhealthy too if you're the kind of person that just stays in those kind of relationships. Now, some people seek out those relationships, and they're kind of attracted to people who are unhealthy, right. and they don't have that. So I think that's like a healthy thermostat that goes off in our brain that says, like a little alarm smoke detector that goes off and says, uh-oh, there's some trouble here. I need to back out of this, You have to find healthy ways to set boundaries. One way I talk to kids, adults too, but just about setting boundaries, is called a kill 'em with kindness sandwich, where you say something nice first, set your boundary, and then say something nice again. So, I was talking to my daughter this weekend just about roommate situations. Hope she's not watching out there. But it was just like her roommates suite mates are not cleaning up. Well, she wants to approach them in a loving way, doesn't want to go in there and just gripe at them and say, you need to get in here and clean up the bathroom. But start out with something nice. Hey, I really like being your roommate. We get along and like hanging out with you and spending time together. But, so that's the sandwich. That's the first part of the bread. Then the meat, but, really need some help. We were going to take turns and it doesn't seem like that's what's happening. And then the last part of the sandwich was, hey, I sure hope we can because I really like being your friend and, sharing time together and, whatever you want to say. But so you start out with something nice, set your boundaries, say something nice again. We do it as parents instead of saying, coming down on them, maybe they leave stuff lying around the house. If you go in and just drill them about, you're always leaving stuff on the floor. Instead of that, start out with, hey, you've been really responsible lately with your room, doing your homework, you're practicing your horn. But, if you could just help us down here, pick some stuff up, we'd sure appreciate that. But man, you've been working hard. I think they take that a little better.
So I think in those, and again, I want to make sure they know where the question was about friendships. The question was about friendships. Go ahead.
Well, so the second part of the question was how, if you do feel that you need to get out of this toxic friendship, how do you do it? Well, I think John Mark's sermon today really nailed that. You do it with humility. You do it with respect. You can lay boundaries with humility and respect. You do it to where, I don't remember the exact quote you said today, but where you pursue peace, that you make sure that peace is involved. And I was thinking about this. Sometimes we think we can impact them if we're their friend, but we can't impact them if we're not. And I was thinking about this in my life. Some of the people who have impacted me most have not been my close friends. They've been the ones kind of in the outer circle who have dropped the card to me saying, hey, I'm thinking about you, or just gone out of their way, or just given me some great advice in the hallway at school or something. So we can still impact this toxic person without being in that close friendship relationship. I think when I define friendship, it's that mutual give and take of two people. And I think you can still impact them without being in that close friendship relationship.
All right, good.